Hello everyone! Today is our third and last webinar of free course Video Creatives in Mobile Gaming organized together with Apptica. And today we're going to discuss several more interesting topics. So let's go! The first topic I'd like to look at is how to organize work in motion designers department. Yeah, there's no surprises that often user acquisition manager is also responsible for creatives management and creative designing. So idea generation, process controlling, setting up ready creatives on UA campaigns, making edits, that's all responsibilities of UA manager. So now I'd like to suggest you a simple framework that gonna ease you your everyday routine. So the following framework is a core pipeline, so you can adjust it in your own way. The first stage is a backlog. Backlog is the stage, is a place where you can store ideas that later could be turned into tasks, or also tasks that should be done later. Second one is to-do. To-do is a stage when you assign some tasks on exact motion designers, or when you drag tasks from backlog and motion designers assign it on their own. And you show that these tasks should be done in the current iteration. So the next stage is in progress. In progress is a stage when motion designer drag some task from to do and he shows that he is in a progress to make it ready. Ready is a stage when motion designer make a task and ask you to watch it and ask you to evaluate it. So there are two ways how to manage with this stage. First one, if you have some edits, you can drag the task back to do. And the second one is drag this task to done. Done is a step number 5 and the last step when task is finally ready, finally done, of course, and you can use it in your UA campaigns. Now let's take a look at some recommendations that can ease your operation. First one is about description. So description should be not detailed and not common. Let me show you what I mean on 3 examples of tasks for MD department. So first one is a quite detailed and quite complex one. So here we define nail color, we define exact animation, we define exact timings, we define exact actions of our hand and many more. So it's hard to bear it in mind and hard to understand from the beginning to end how tasks should look like. So it's not the best practice. Try to avoid it. The second example is quite common task. Quite common tasks, there are no specific notes, there are no specific essential elements in it. And if you provide this task for 2 different motion designers, they will give you 2 quite different video creatives. Yeah, and you wouldn't understand that initial task was the same for both of them. So pay attention to notify and to determine so details in your technical task and don't make it quite common. The third example is a balanced task. So in this task, we determine some key notes that should be put in our ready marketing creative. So what are these notes? Yeah, they are stages from our first video. Yeah, it's a simple framework consisted of 3 steps: attention, interest, and engagement. So pay attention to it and try to notice the stages in your task. Leave some degree of expression for motion designers in tasks like this. Don't make your designers feel like cogs in machine. And now let's take a look at some recommendations that can improve your task management. First one is references. No surprise that a lot of creatives, they drag something from competitor ones. So try to use link or video creative of competitors for motion designer to understand where to go to. So this is just even for audio references. If you want a specific music, you can attach it for your motion designer in your task. Also, you can notify that we need some mood and attach an example so motion designer can find exact audio track. Second one is localizations. Locals are really essential part. I saw a lot of times when motion designers drag task to done, so they are starting to set up UA campaigns, they use a creative, and then find out that we need some localization. So you as a UA manager should determine these essential attributes in your task. Number 3, orientation. So in UA we deal mostly with portrait and landscape, but sometimes we need to use some specific orientations for different networks. For example, 1:1, 4:5, 2:3, and many more. So specify it in your task to not to do it later. Number 4, lens. Lens is a crucial part for some networks. For example, Unity works with creative 30 seconds duration only. Also, some networks like Vangle and Applavin, for example, they operate with creatives up to 1 minute. And now let's take a look at some metrics that can help you evaluate as performance. First one is IPM. IPM is a great metric that shows how our pre-install funnel converts. So the issue of this metric is that it doesn't connect it with our post-install performance. In most of cases, exactly even post-install performance is crucial for us. So pay attention for this issue and don't evaluate your creatives by IPM. Second one is retention. Retention is a good metric, but there is 2 issues. First one is that retention doesn't guarantee perform. So dependence of retained users with payers is not functional but correlational. Second one is for products that monetized with ads. Retention is really great metric, but for LATON users, monetization is less than for LATOF users. Number 3, cost per payer. Cost per payer is a also great metric, yeah, and it shows how much our paying user cost us on exact day. But the issue is that on the one hand we have a cost per payer, on another hand we have average revenue per paying user, and you have to compare these 2 metrics to make some decisions about your performance. Don't ignore it. Number 4, and this metric is the most crucial for evaluating your performance. It's ROS. Its beauty is that you can evaluate performance on every stage of your marketing funnel. For example, revenue per mile and cost per mile. average revenue per user, and CPI, average revenue per paying user and cost per payer, and of course revenue and cost. So this metric shows you how your cohort brings money comparing to money that you spend to attract them. So this metric should be in the forefront of your performance evaluation. And now let's take a look at creative's life cycle. So we have to draw a chart consisted of two axes. First one is performance, second one is time. Of course, here we have dotted line that represents our minimum acceptable performance level, and we have a curve that represents our stages of creative. So first stage is performance time. So on this stage, creative performs steady and we don't expect ups and downs in performance. Second stage is creative starts to burn out. So you should pay attention to your creatives to reveal this stage and exclude your creative from the whole creative mix in the end of the stage. Third one is creative burnt out. You don't have to rotate your creatives when this stage happens. So you can see this and the next stage, creative death, only in some tests, that can show you how different creative live. Let's see what to strive for. So we have same chart with two axes, performance and time, same dotted line that represents our minimum acceptable performance level, and we have several creative curves. So here you can see when our previous creative shows us performance lower than minimum acceptable performance level, we should have in rotation new top creative. Same goes for the next creative. So that's the key finding. So you should operate in your motion department and in your UA department as well this way to avoid some fall downs in your spend in KPI. So keep it in mind and it will lead you to success. Now let's discuss expectations management. Expectations management. Often we think that our work should look like linear line. So let's call this line expectation. Especially if you are owner or founder, you expect that you pay a salary every month and you want to get back some results. Some results every month. But that's not how it looks in reality. But about it a bit later. Sometimes we can face some quick wins. So quick wins is a fast fade in and fade out in our performance. Sometimes that's a killer features that could be represented through our creatives that can blast our users and bring us enormous amount of traffic. You can see some examples and you can find them because they are really obvious. But in reality, it works another way. So in reality, we should face with step-by-step constant improvements that will lead us to long-term success. So that's really important thing to keep it in mind, that sometimes it's okay that you have quick wins, but in most of cases, in 99.9% of cases, you have to deal with constant process that will bring a viable and obvious results in a long term. So this area between two curves, first one is expectations and second one is reality, is valley of devastation. I saw a lot of motion designers and a lot of UA managers that thought that they are a burden for their teams. They didn't see quick results and thought that they only waste companies' time and money. But reality works another way. Keep it in mind. There's a solution from this issue. So just to talk to yourself, just to tell yourself that it's okay not to see quick results, because all the results, all the explode results, all the top publishers, all the top games, they worked in a long term and they succeed working constantly, step by step. Talk about it to your teammates. You can try to talk about it to your boss. That's really essential for you not to burn out while you're working in user acquisition or marketing creators department. This was described by many famous people and specialists. For example, Jim Collins in book From Good to Great described how good companies become great companies. Also, you can find some notes about it in the books of Nassim Taleb and Eliyahu Goldratt, Target. Let's take a look at simple example that illustrates this issue. So let's imagine that you have heat water from 1 to 100 degrees to make it boil. So let's imagine that you heated it to 60 degrees. So from outside, it would look like you did nothing. Yeah, because the water is not boiling, there is no bubbles, for example. But in reality, you did a huge step. The problem is that in most of cases, we don't have our inner thermometer that could show us that from the initial point, we did a huge jump. Thanks for your attention, thanks for watching, thanks for attending this free video course. Hope you enjoyed it and hope it was valuable. See you next time. Bye bye.